streaming now. Should be good to go. You know what? I don't even know if I gave it a name yet because I edited it after it's done. So let's see what I put it in there as YouTube. I'm going to call this one if-else statements. Alrighty. Okay, so I don't want to waste too much of your time today because you should get both of these done. The assignment that you're going to finish today, as well as the assignment that I'm going to give you guys today to do. I'm going to make sure the only reason I'm making a live stream of this one is because it can be a little difficult for you guys who are just learning this logic. Others obviously are extremely advanced that have been working with Vex Robotics or just basic computer science for a while. So please, I ask you guys that you're silent, quiet, and just watch as I go along and explain this. So the first thing I have inside of Google Classroom is basically this while loops and if-else statements. And from here on to, I should say up to this point, basically what's happened so far is that you guys have learned step-by-step coding. So you start a motor, you wait, you stop, you run, you press a limit switch, you do whatever, right? So now we're going to learn a little bit more in-depth stuff. That's not how real life scenarios work. So I'm going to teach you guys a little bit more around what are called conditions and commands inside of those conditions. And what that basically means is that, guys, what that basically means is that there's going to be loops. There are going to be scenarios that happen, and it's looking for a specific scenario that you identified, also known as a condition or command. So let's begin. If you scroll down very bottom of this page, I should say this document, you guys will see what's called Boolean logic. Now, we talked a little bit about how digital outputs work and all that kind of stuff. The reality of the situation is that computers read in binary code, which is why no matter what, you will have a robotic, in this case, robotic symbol that is going to be binary. Okay? If there's nothing there, it is 0. If there is something there, it's 1 in that mind. There's also a true and false statement within most of these Boolean logics, and you're going to see, and what you're going to use the most is probably equal to, is not equal to, is kind of, I don't really use that much, is less than or equal to, is greater than or equal to. And that's what we're going to kind of introduce you, some of these scenarios within Boolean logic today. So let's go over this and let's start this. Let's say for number 1, let's go and start there. The flashlight turns on if the light sensor reads greater than 700. So let's say within using what we have used so far, what's the logic look like there? What does the pseudocode of that look like? Who can help me? It's the first step. What's that? Okay, so if something, we'll start there. If what? Okay, so let's say if light sensor, we'll say. Greater than 700. Okay, there's, some of you guys have light sensors, some of you have line followers. Use whatever you have. If you have a light sensor, great. If you don't, within the thing, so we don't have to keep switching all these test beds and all that stuff, okay? Beyond all that, okay, so we have that. What else is the scenario that we're missing here? What happens if the light sensor is greater than 700? So we'll say flashlight on. And is that it? Okay, good. So if, we'll say another if statement, light sensor is less than, we'll say. Then what's going to happen? Flashlight's off. Good question. So Sam just asked if it is equal. In this scenario, it doesn't say, right? Most scenarios it'll tell you if it is equal to. If it doesn't say, you can do whenever you want. If you want to make it greater than or equal to. In this case, it's specifically only saying greater than, though, right? In most scenarios, if I tell you it'll be greater than or equal to, then obviously you put that pseudo or the Boolean logic that matches that scenario. Okay. So using that, let's start and look in. Basically, that's it. There are going to be some weights in here, but beyond that, let's look at what this thing is going to be. So we'll look back here, and it says if condition, right? Let me make this a little bit bigger. If condition, so we're going to start with an if statement, right? And this is all after the task main. Task main, boom, computer's on, right? Then you're going to have basically an open door, open bracket. Looks something like this. You're going to have an if state. I just changed it. So if statement, right? Then you are going to have inside of that, it tells you, as you go back to the document, that there's going to be a condition, either a true or false condition. So what that means is in this case, our true or false condition is if the light sensor is greater than. So what the activation code is to get into a sensor, you say if, and you say capitalization sensor value, bracket, and then within that bracket is going to be, like you guys have done before, the actual component that you're trying to activate. So in this case, the light sensor. Let's say like this. Okay, within that, we can also say greater than or equal to, or just greater than a value. End that bracket, end that parentheses, no semicolon. If and else statements do not use a semicolon. Okay? So, if the sensor value, what sensor value? The light sensor is greater than 700, something is going to happen. So what did we say something is going to happen? We said that the flashlight will turn on, right? So turn flashlight on. And then we're going to say what flashlight? Well, we call it flashlight, whatever, right? We say 127 because that's the max value. And then I would put a wait after this to let it stay on for, let's say, 3 seconds. What loops do is it's constantly checking for a specific scenario to happen. So in this case, I'll zoom in a little bit just so you guys can see it. In this case, what you're going to see is that it's going to, if this is true, this is going to happen. Now, like Sam said, if that's not true, we also have to put that scenario. So it says, use 2 if structures in parentheses in the document. So if you look like that, it says use 2 if structures. What that means is basically we are going to apply 2 of these ifs within one code. So we're going to have another if, and we're going to say the same activation sensor value, same exact piece of the puzzle, and we're going to say less than 700. And then open a bracket, because if this statement is true, this stuff is going to happen. If this statement is true, this stuff is going to happen. So we're going to say if that's true, if it's less than, it's going to turn flashlight off. And in this case, yeah, in this case, it's just the flashlight. We're not going to say a value because it's just turning it off. You close that door. You have to follow along, and if you open one door, you're also going to have to close the other door. What I put down there is just that other pass. So in this code, it starts, and now it's not going line by line. It always starts from the top, obviously, but you are going to go line, and it's going to check if statements first. It's going to say, if the sensor value, the light sensor, is greater than 700, it's going to do this. If it's not, it's going to go to the next if statement. And it's going to say, okay, if sensor value light sensor is less than 700, sure, it's going to turn the flashlight off, and it's going to go back. Go ahead. So that the flashlight stays on for 3 seconds. If you keep it on, or you just put that, I don't know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, to be honest with you. If I don't put a weight in there, it'll just stay on. It's supposed to just stay on. Yeah. Wait, so would it turn off if the value was over 700 and continuing the system? What would it do if it was over 700? Would it stay on for 3 seconds? If it's over 700, it's going to stay on for 3 seconds and then continue onto the code and check these if statements. So here's the catch. How do we, after it's done with choosing whatever one works, it's not gonna loop yet. What we're gonna use is what's called a while loop. Okay? So within this statement, okay, we don't have this thing looping. It's gonna go to here or here, and then it's just gonna stop the code. Yep. No matter what, it'll run through what this is. So it'll stay on for 3 seconds, and then it'll check, and it'll be done. Okay? So without this, let's say we want this to always happen. Let's say Ani, as the light sensor, the line follower, and he wants to have a fun game and hold it, let go, hold it, let go, hold it, let go, whatever. He wants to keep it going continuously. Okay? He wants to be whatever. Yeah, just have a beat. I don't know. So in this case, you're going to say the same kind of thing. And you're going to say, let's say we have a task main. Open the door. Now, before that, we're going to have what are called while loops. While loops are a little bit farther down, and they still have a condition, which is what it's going to say here. They still have a condition that goes through, and it talks about a repeated command, right? So let's start by just going over what these things look like. So the first thing it said is same as number one. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. Same as number one, but it uses an if-else structure instead of an if-if. Why would we do that? The real reason is because if you have a condition that you know is only two options, two ways you want to go, okay? So if you know if it's greater than 700, or you say it's greater than or equal to, like Sam wants to, greater than 700, what is the only other option it can be? Less than 700. So why are we going to have to rewrite all of that other second if statement? We wouldn't even write this second statement at all. We would just put something that looks like this. So instead of having this if statement here, we are going to say while 1, and Boolean logic tells us that while 1 equals 1. When does 1 not equal 1? Never. Always equals 1 in this reality. Within that while loop, you're going to open another bracket, and then you're going to start that if statement. If sensor value, again, light sensor, and now I'm gonna lock it in. So light sensor greater than or equal to 700. No colon, semicolon. Open that if statement, and like these guys want to do, they just want to keep the flashlight on. They're going to leave it on, and then the second statement we did before was another if statement, right? Now we're going to use what's called an else statement. So what this is doing is it's going to say, well, while equal to 1, so it's going to run what's in these brackets. It's going to say, okay, if the sensor value light sensor is greater than or equal to 700, it's going to turn the flashlight on, keep it on. If it's not greater than or equal to 700, which means it's less than, it's going to turn flashlight off. Flashlight. And that, you also have to end this loop, and you also have to end the other loop. I know, I'm trying to push it up as much as I can. Okay? So what this code does is it says start while 1 equal 1, which it always will. It's going to continuously stay in these brackets until you stop the program. It will never leave these brackets. So it's going to say while 1 equal 1. It's going to say if this light sensor is greater than or equal to 700, it's going to turn the flashlight on. Okay? Flashlight's going to stay on. And then it's going to go back and go back to the while loop. Well, is 1 still equal to 1? Yup. So I'm going to check it again. Well, now, for whatever reason, the light sensor is less than 700. So it's the else. It'll turn it off. Go back to while equal 1, and it'll continuously loop until you stop that program. It'll never stop. Okay? Yeah. Why did I take the what? I don't know. Thank you. Sure. I don't like T's.
There's no S in there either.
Okay? The next thing, and the last thing I'm going to talk about. Question, Ed?
Yeah, on the other one you said do not put a colon or semicolon. Why not put a semicolon?
If statements, you don't need them. They don't need them because they're statements. They're not conditions or anything like that. You're not giving a command. You're giving a statement.
Okay, so
They just don't need them. No.
what about for else?
Else, you don't need them either.
You just write else and that's it.
Just write else, and then you just keep going. Yeah.
Will it yell at you if you do have one there?
Nope. Yeah, we'll give you that yellow. It won't let you not use it, but I don't think, but it'll give you yellow. Okay. The rest of them are just going to go through clear timers and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go too much into that. But the only other thing that I want to make sure you identify are double while loops, which are going to get you a little bit headstrong, a little bit crazy. So let's talk about that. Let's say you have a task main. Same scenario. We're going to keep that task main while equal 1. I'm going to focus. There we go. While 1 equal 1, which just basically locks this code into this bracket. All this code is just going to keep looping and run.
Is this only used in this?
This is C++. So basically from here, task main, while loop, then inside of the after the while loop, you're going to see another while statement. While, for example, sensor value again. Let's say the limit switch is pressed at the same time when the limit switch is pressed. So while sensor value limit, I'm going to call it, is equal to 1, then this stuff is going to happen. Is everyone with me so far? Okay. While 1 equal 1, this stuff is all going to happen and completely loop and loop and loop. While the button is pressed, it's going to go through these two if statements now. So F sensor value, we'll say the light. I'm not going to put the T just to spite you guys. Light is greater than 700. So I got on it. Gotcha. Don't worry about it. I told you no excuses, man. Done. Dead. No. So I'm talking about the both of them. So we have from there, inside of that bracket, the flashlight, turned on flashlight, right? We call it flash 127. Close that, and I'm going to say an else like we just did instead, because if it's not greater than or equal to, just to save time. It's going to be the else. It's going to say open, turn the flashlight off. Let's say turn flashlight off. It goes the other way, doesn't it? Off. Flash. Yeah, it did. The other one is on. It's okay. Close. Close that bracket. Close that bracket. Close that bracket. Close that bracket. This program, while 1 equal 1, this will keep going, no matter what. While the sensor value limit switch is pressed, basically you're pushing in a button while that button has to be pressed. If that button is not pressed, none of this works. When the button is pressed, it's going to check if the sensor value light sensor is greater than or equal to 700 to turn the flashlight on, and it's going to check again. Is the button still pressed? Yep. So is the value greater than or equal to 700, or is it less than 700? It's going to turn off. Go back. It's going to keep going back and checking these two and keep going back and forth until you let go, and then it's just going to stop altogether. Yeah. No. Okay? That's the extensive part that you're going to get to when you get towards the bottom. Are there any questions on any of that? You know it's a lot. Okay, so what you guys should have is the rest of class today. You should have